Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you to our today's webinar, Remote Working, a New Normal. And I'm very happy to welcome as our expert in the field, Ms. Sindhu Gangadharan. She is Senior Vice President and Managing Director of SAP Labs India, and she is here with us today. Good morning, Sindhu, to Bangalore.
Good morning, Mr. Steinruecke.
Ladies and gentlemen,
great to be here.
Good morning, good morning. Yes, great for me too. And I just want to briefly introduce Sindhu before we come into the detailed discussion. And Sindhu is a SAP homegrown. She basically joined SAP more than 20 years ago in Bangalore and then moved to Germany and was working in the headquarters of SAP for many, many years. And now she's back in Bangalore as the head of SAP Labs in India, with facilities in Bangalore, Pune, Mumbai, and in Gurgaon. And she's been working for SAP in various fields, and she played a very important role in the integration strategy of SAP with the cloud platform, and maybe she will tell us a little bit more about what SAP is doing in the cloud. But then she was expert in the field when SAP introduced a strategic and global intelligence as enterprise program. So she was working in this very special field, and maybe she can also elaborate about this a little bit. And she is now back in Bangalore. Not long after she came back, the virus struck the world. And this changed not only her life, but the life of everybody. And especially in the IT industry, it is a dramatic change, because the way the IT industry is working now with work from home is something very unusual. And that is what we want to discuss with her today, to find out a little bit more how SAP is managing this new normal, and how she's personally also managing, because she has two small kids, and therefore, like many of the people in India now, have a big challenge to have not only their own work from home, but the schooling with the kids from home, and probably a husband at home who has his own work from home challenges. So this is something very, very unusual. And this is what we want to discuss today, but we also want to discuss the way forward. But before we go into these details, I want to ask Sindhu, basically, how do you see the economic situation at the moment? Because the downturn will be dramatic. Nobody is still really believing that, for instance, in India, we will have any growth rate this year. Where are we heading to, as per your opinion at the moment? Sindhu, please.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Steinruecke, and good morning to everybody who took time to be on this call. It's a great honor for me to be here and to talk to you about, the new norm, as Mr. Steinruecke said. So yes, Mr. Steinruecke, we are all indeed going through one of the most challenging times, if you ask me, at least in our lifetimes. And this event definitely has also has a huge impact on the economy. And there's no doubt that we'll certainly have a downturn on the economy. And if I just reflect back on some of the events lately, and as most of you know, the International Monetary Fund also revised its global GDP growth estimate from 3.3% just 3 months ago to 3%. Now, if you ask me, this is unforeseen and something we have not at all witnessed since the Great Depression of 1929. However, and being pretty optimistic about how we have all kind of adopted and embracing the new norm, and also just reflecting on the markets in the APAC region where we are all located, I think the APAC region particularly should be able to weather this challenge. Now, the IMF GDP forecast also suggests that India will continue to remain the fastest growing major economy in 2020. But at the same time, we all know that this completely depends on how fast we are able to flatten the curve. I mean, we haven't really reached the peak here from the numbers and also from the statistics that we are seeing from the other countries. But at the same time, I think, Mr. Steinruecke, we should absolutely consider ourselves fortunate that the pandemic and the onslaught of this pandemic hasn't been as harsh yet. And most of the Asian economies, at least here in Asia, have been able to brace the impact and also contain the pandemic to quite a great extent. Now, this gives us the promise that these economies will slowly but steadily get back to work. What we should also see is the massive stimulus packages across all the key economies of the world will also certainly allow businesses as well as the respective local economies, like also here in India, to revive, right? And if you ask me, my observation also during the economic meltdown back in 2008, which we thought was kind of the back then the largest meltdown that we have seen, and if you just compare to what we are seeing today, it's really, to a certain extent, of course, we're working with a totally different type of impact, but at the same time, it's important that businesses need to have an expansion plan which is not only determined by a select few economies, but it's super important that it should be spread across and combined with very strong impetus and focus on also the local business ecosystems. And most importantly, and I think what we are all seeing, I mean, just look at the nature of this call as well, I think it's super important to underline that technology will no longer be just as an enabler. Rather, if you ask me, it will become the elixir of transformation for businesses of all forms, all sizes, all shapes, right, Mr. Steinruecke?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, we could now continue to discuss the economic scenario, but I think we should maybe look more at the immediate changes that we are facing. And one of the immediate changes, certainly digitalization, and the fact that we are now all able to work from home and is certainly something, I mean, which we never thought just a couple of months ago. And therefore, my next question would be, how do you see this development? How inclusive will that be? And are we really prepared to accept it?
Yeah, if I just if I just reflect also before the lockdown got into full swing in India, I think if I just reflect also on my own organization at SAP, we already a week before the lockdown got into full swing, we said, okay, let's move into a work from home mode. Now, the reason we were able to quickly do that was also because of policies that we had in place that allowed us to make that shift very quickly. And this initial week before the actual lockdown was kind of enforced by the Prime Minister, also helped us to give us some time to kind of adjust to the things and look at also supporting some of the colleagues who had some challenges when it came to working from home. So in that sense, I think none of us were prepared for such an eventuality in this scale and for this long period of time. But at the same time, thanks to the digital orientation or that journey of digital transformation that each of the economies or organizations and us as individuals took up, we were able to quickly shift to an online mode of working. And this again goes to emphasize the beauty of technology and that it's super important and it ensures that you're connected, right? And when you talk about inclusion and kind of how inclusive technology can also help us, I mean, it's important that with the beauty of technology that we are connected, it also ensures that your voices, your ideas, your thoughts are heard, and we try our best that the barrier of distance is no more a barrier at all, right? And suddenly, like all of us here in this call, we are living in this connected world experience. Now, as I said, going digital was gaining ground, and because of the COVID-19 situation, if you just look at the organizations out there or governments out there, including the Indian government and individuals, we've absolutely understood the importance of what it means to have a digitally enabled society, right? And even if you just take the example of the Indian government launching, for example, the Arogya Setu app, which is again an app which allows you to ensure that we are somehow safe, and allows you with very few simple questions to very quickly outline in terms of are we feeling safe as an individual, right? And same way, if I just look at also at SAP, there are multiple threads that I'm privy to within SAP's network of customers who are also exploring possible solutions, not just from SAP's portfolio of solutions that we have, but also together with our partner ecosystem, and jointly also looking at how they can become an intelligent enterprise and grow their business. Because in these times, it's super important that businesses are able to leverage technologies in a way that allows them to make those right decisions, have access to data and to key elements within that data that allow them to also look at ways in which they reach their customers, give them that, again, that unique digital experience that is so much needed in these times, but also be able to very quickly turn around and say, hey, this is where we are going to focus on, and this not, right? So again, I see a lot of enterprises leveraging technologies, and it's so important that they do that to truly become intelligent enterprises and grow their business. Now, on another note, inclusiveness of digital strategy is also reflecting. If I look at the events for SAP for this year, for 2020, like for example, every year in June, we have our largest flagship customer and partner event called Sapphire, which is like our largest event where we have all our customers and partners usually coming together in Orlando once a year. But this year, even this event is going virtual, right? Now, if you ask me, the positive about this is this quickly enables several thousands of SAP enthusiasts to also attend Sapphire, which in the past, if you ask me, required travel to Orlando and being there. And so in that sense, if you just look at the positive aspects of this also, definitely technology brings out that inclusiveness that is needed in these very tiring times.
Well, certainly the carbon footprint of that Sapphire conference will be much better than in the past, that is for sure. Maybe now a little more in detail, what role is your company and maybe even some other IT companies playing in making the digital growth inclusive?
Yeah, I talked about a few examples, and again, if you ask me, for any society or for any organization to grow and prosper, this whole aspect of digital inclusivity is almost non-negotiable, if you ask me. However, if you also look at the statistics, and according to the World Bank, more than half of the global citizens are still excluded when it comes to the digital economy. And so in an economy which is really fast turning into, like I said, data-driven, and where everybody is looking at data to make those very key decisions, digital inclusion is all the more imperative, as no one should be deprived of the benefits that this digital era promises and gives you access to. And which means the need of the hour becomes that we as organizations also need to get into very close cooperations with the governments that we work with, and because only through them can we really accelerate the speed of digital inclusion in societies that we operate out of, right? So if you ask me at SAP, Mr. Steinruecke, through our various corporate social responsibility initiatives, we are absolutely addressing and also focusing on issues to improve people's lives so that they can really participate and also, if you ask me, reap the benefits like I talked about that a digital society provides. Now, for example, if I just look back in the last year, into 2019, SAP donated 23 million to education and the whole workforce development programs, as well as a lot of these youth entrepreneurship projects. Now, these programs take place in more than 105 countries, including India, and also in back in 2019, 52% of all the employee volunteer hours from our side were focusing also on our core strengths, because this is also where we can give back. And this is also where we talk about skills-based in support of education, in preparing the workforce of the future, and also giving those right entrepreneurship skills to the youth, to kind of set them up for success on their own. Besides that, if I call out few programs that we've been very passionate about and we're very proud about as well, SAP and UNICEF. I mean, here we announced a very strategic partnership in support of Generation Unlimited to help deliver a very inclusive and global workforce. And here, with the goal to help 1.5 million young people really thrive and succeed. And we started off with a few focus countries. And the idea is, again, like I said, bringing businesses, governments, as well as NGOs to build these sustainable education models. Another great example, and here, which we're very proud of, is Code Unnati. I mean, this project is very dear to my heart because it's all about digital literacy. And like I said, the governments across the world have a very huge responsibility to ensure that their citizens are part of this digital economy. Now, if you just look at the statistics in India, and if you just relate to the numbers that we have, so one out of the 1.38 billion people in India, still it's surprising to note that 1.18 billion people are digitally illiterate, right? And that's why through Code Unnati, we are enabling school children and mainly targeting those areas which are children who are coming from really underprivileged backgrounds. And here the focus is really helping them those basic computer skills, right? So basic skills, skills that enhance their education as well as economic opportunities. And we've been working with customers and partners, also with the local governments, the state government, as well as the central governments to train. And we're very proud that we've trained more than 1 million children across 14 states in India in digital skills, in math and language skills. And recently, Code Unnati, we joined forces with Project Nanhi Kali. Nanhi Kali, for those of you, it is called Budding Girl, actually. It's an initiative that launched by Mahindra and Mahindra. And Code Unnati, we joined forces with Nanhi Kali to provide quality education and also digital access to over 11,000 young girls in underprivileged areas. So again, if you ask me, I mean, at SAP, we've been very careful in how we select our partners, but our focus has always been in quality education, in getting the workforce of tomorrow ready, because it's also about emerging technologies that we also need to imbibe as skills into these areas. But at the same time, imagine if you also have a very young population where they're also able to sustain and build businesses on their own, which is also important. And this is why the whole entrepreneurship program to co-develop and co-innovate also becomes very, very important. Now, if I circle back to the topic of COVID-19 and how some of the things where we have also used technology to kind of very quickly support the situation at hand. I mean, I can go on at length, but for example, we opened up many of our technologies at absolutely no additional cost for our wider ecosystem, including customers, partners, and the communities that we operate out of. And if Mr. Steinruecke, if I call out some of them, like we opened up the Ariba Discovery Platform. Now, the Ariba Discovery Platform, for those of you who have not heard of it before, it's one of the world's largest business network with several millions of suppliers on that network. And we opened it up for free for 90 days, and which enables any buyer to post their immediate sourcing needs, and any supplier can respond and fulfill the requirement. Now, you can imagine in these times where the need for also protective equipment, masks, sanitization support, all this becomes super important, and very quickly you need to match the demand with the supply and also the areas which need it the most. And this is where these networks come of very immediate need and support. Besides that, also, if I reflect back, we also opened up our experience management solution called Qualtrics. And again, very quickly to support employers to respond to the very quick needs across their teams to also serve customers much better. Here in Karnataka, because I mean, our largest operation in India is based out of Bangalore. I mean, like you rightly said at the beginning, Mr. Steinruecke, yes, we are present across 5 states in the country, but here in Karnataka, we are also working with the government of Karnataka, and our machine learning team is playing a very significant role in creating a predictive simulation model for COVID-19 in close collaboration with also institutes like the Indian Institute of Science and so on. Also in Germany, you must have heard the contact tracing app for Germany was built by SAP in close collaboration with Deutsche Telekom. So overall, if you ask me, we've played a very significant role and continue to play a very significant role in making this whole digital growth inclusive, Mr. Steinruecke.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. That's indeed very impressive what SAP is doing there, and how you try to really improve the digital reality for many people in India who have no proper access. That brings me to the next question. The topic is remote working, a new normal. Now, is it going to be the new normal, the work from home? And how do you see it going forward? And I mean, in India, we have challenges. Does India have the bandwidth and the infrastructure to sustain work from home? How does it look like?
Yeah, I think if you ask me, a lot has to also start on the organization level, right? So I just maybe for a minute reflect on some of the things that we put in place at SAP even before the COVID times, because like I mentioned, work from home was a policy that we always enjoyed. Of course, compared to today, it was never the case that we worked from home for these prolonged periods of time, no doubt about it, but at least it was a policy where employees can kind of choose it and use it when they wanted to. Now, this was only possible because all SAP employees 100% are having laptops. So we don't have a desktop concept at all, right? So which also helps organizations to declare work from home option very quickly. Now, besides that, we also give a lot of flexibility and freedom to employees to choose their preferred internet options, be it broadband connection or data card, or having a mobile hotspot for our company mobile users. And from an IT point of view, we also have enough VPN, the virtual private network, the infrastructure capacity to connect all employees at the same time and also work seamlessly, right? And simple things like employees having high quality certified headsets, or like Jabra head, or any headsets for that matter, to attend these virtual conferences becomes super important, because many times you don't want to get into a call where you're struggling with just getting the audio quality right and lose half the time in getting just the connection and the quality of your audio correct. So in that sense, I mean, policies from organizations to give their employees the chance to work from anywhere and using any devices, be it the company or private devices, by connecting to a virtual environment without compromising, of course, very important, safety and security, right? And this gives very high flexibility to employees. And of course, also data being on the cloud, mailboxes and etc. allows also employees to access data from anywhere, from any device. So if you ask me, in my view, work from home will be there for quite a while. Mainly because right now in these times, the safety and well-being of our employees is super important, not only for us, but all companies. And even if we think about when we kind of get back when the offices resume, it'll be definitely a staggered entry of resources with very clear, stringent norms in terms of how are we maintaining the physical distancing, how are we ensuring that we have the right seating arrangements, not just in the office spaces, but also In campuses like here in Bangalore, where we also have a beautiful cafeteria, we again have to ensure that the physical distancing aspects are being taken into account. Now, the other day, if I just reflect, I was reading this article by Dr. Sridhar Mitha, who's the former CTO of Wipro, where he was speaking about the lockdown and how the IT industry transitioned into this work from home model. And he also talked about the smooth way in which we were able to ensure the business continuity to our customers and without also lowering the quality and productivity, right? And this again, if I just reflect back, goes back to the fact that, again, organizations like us, even before the COVID times, took those necessary measures that allowed for this smooth transition to be possible, right? And if I just reflect back on that article, he also says one of the key reasons he talks about for the successful transition is also availability of communication bandwidth, both not only in the metros, but also in small towns. I mean, a lot of the employees also use the initial days to go back into their hometowns. And there again, the bandwidth becomes super important that they're able to continue in the same mode. And I think if you just reflect back, back in 2011, the National Optical Fiber Network was initiated. And I think this had a very key role to play in this possibility today, which we are all benefiting from. And over the past 9 years, this has also helped in connecting over 1 lakh gram panchayats. And as an industry, we are all hoping that this reach continues to be extended as much as possible, because we all know that this situation of working from home is not just going to go away in few months' time.
The question that, of course, always arises is whether the remote from home culture is becoming more productive. And especially when I look at Bangalore with the traffic, I mean, I know you provide transport for your staff, but to get from one place to the other in Bangalore or in Mumbai or in Gurgaon or you name it, I mean, some people, it takes an hour or even longer to come to the office. They are tired then already when they start. So from that angle, the work from home, is it really increasing the productivity? What is your experience?
That's a great question. And I think you touched on some of the key points where if you ask folks, like what is the kind of the biggest positive out of this whole thing, they're like, oh, I don't need to commute, right? So indeed, there's no doubt about the fact that yes, there are challenges which of course we talked about some of them, but if you ask the folks, at least in some of the metros, like in cities like in Bangalore, I mean, the commute definitely is a challenge, right? But if you asked an important question on productivity, let me touch on that. And definitely I think there are many studies out there, and we ourselves also did a large survey, which I'll talk about. And everywhere we see kind of an kind of acknowledgement of there is an improvement in productivity. Now, some of these references and anecdotal references are coming in from the United States, where also a recently conducted survey has revealed that working from home is not bad, and at least 54% of the people who were part of that survey said that it definitely had a positive impact on their productivity. Now at SAP, like I said, we've also been very closely observing this for multiple reasons, right? It's of course, we need to ensure that our employees feel good. We also need to ensure business continuity for our clients. We also need to make sure that we have all the infrastructure in place that allows everybody to continue in this mode. And so we also did certain productivity tests by analyzing few parameters across product development, but also looking at customer usage of our products, cloud solutions, as well as the customer support piece. So these are different bigger areas across the organization. And if I just look at the pulse that we did with about 30,000 employees globally from the product engineering function, at least based on the initial analysis, the results really look promising, right? And when I say promising, what this means is we see an upward trend when it comes to the product backlog management. We also see an upward trend when it comes to effective coordination among teams. Again, people paying very close attention to minutes and decisions taken in meetings, because again, it's not just what you heard anymore. You have to read through the things, and effective coordination becomes super important. And of course, what we are also seeing is increased usage of the various collaboration tools. Again, like I said, effective documentation becomes super important, which earlier was done offline. And talking about documentation, again, I have to underline that this plays a very vital role in the business, and also believe that this new way of working is enabling us to adopt the digital way of documenting things, right? And also what we saw from the pulse check initially we saw a downward trend when it came to customer usage and support aspects, and very quickly we saw again the trajectory steadily moving upwards. I'm not aware of any broad study that has happened in India, and I'm sure there will be these kind of productivity checks that are happening, where we can also look at real data coming across the industry and not just individual organizations like us. But again, if you ask me, and if I reflect back on the numerous conversations that I have with employees, but also clients, right? I think one factor, at least in India, that comes across is hey, I don't have the commute, and that at least in the big cities, this definitely eats into a lot of time, and that I think is now being better utilized by people, not just by working, but also for their own selves, which I think is also very important in these times, where you use your time in a productive manner, both on your work, but also on yourself. And I think that is definitely something that we are seeing, Mr. Steinruecke.
Well, it's quite interesting. Just today in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, which is the largest German daily newspaper, there's a report about a recent study they made about how people would accept more work from home on the long run. And there it said only about 19% are saying they would love to continue working from home when the pandemic is over. That means the vast majority still would like to basically go back to the office and work the way they've been working in the past, in spite of commuting, etc. And in this context, one of the topics that we have even now is the topic of remote workplace fatigue. That means people are getting bored sitting in front of a desktop and sitting at home, not meeting the colleagues and not interacting with the colleagues as they did in the past on a face-to-face basis. So is this living at home, this sort of quarantine or prison, if you wish, is that going to basically curtail creativity and of course also curtail efficiency at the end of the day and output?
No, that's a great question, and I can just reflect on me personally. I mean, yes, we have all the technology, and we are completely enabled, and we talked about productivity gains and all that, but we are human beings and we are social in nature, right? So we are absolutely, if you ask me, I'm definitely looking forward to getting back to the office, because many times you are in these large conference calls, and you miss out on those very critical kind of emotional aspects, where you are able to look into people's eyes, understand, think, I mean, also see what they are thinking, which they're probably not saying. You miss out on those aspects as well when you're just on, however great the technology can be. These are aspects, I think, which we all miss, right? And this is important that we acknowledge it. And so this prolonged period of isolation is definitely something new. I mean, every once in a way to just work from home is different from this prolonged period where now we're all in front of our laptops and or our phones and constantly on the go, if you ask me. And this is definitely something that is new for all of us, no doubt about it. But again, like I said, us as human beings, we are social in nature, and we look forward to those social interactions. And also continued isolation like this definitely can have an impact. And it's only natural that you say in the Deutsche Allgemeine Zeitung that people say that they want to get back to the office irrespective of all the challenges with commute and all that. So it's therefore during these very critical times where we are not able to have that kind of physical connects with people. It's also very important that we keep the communication lines and those digital connects, have the various channels of communication possible to keep that virtual bonding alive and kicking, right? And again, it's important that organizations pay attention that in this very fast-paced, competitive, very demanding world, I mean, there's so much of noise out there. So this can also result in stress and all the other noises that you have around there. And when I say noise, it's also the mental noise, right? It can take a toll on the emotional health of people. And this is again made worse where, again, given the fact that we're all here with connected and all that, but we still miss that sharing with your friends, with your colleagues, with your extended family. Some people are even with the lockdown in just on their own because they were not able to make it quick enough to be with their families, or and so on, right? So this definitely poses to be a significant challenge. And again, here I want to also make a point that we are also looking into this as an organization, and this is also why we provided our employees an emotional assistance program called Sahyog. Now, behind Sahyog, it's a very free, and it's actually a confidential counseling service, both for our permanent employees but also for our contract employees, which give them the option to discuss a whole range of issues, right? So these issues can be depression, work-related stress, work-life balance, substance abuse, alcoholism, marital counseling. So, I mean, we're all people, so we can have any of these issues. And besides that, what we are also doing is employees periodically receive a lot of these curated articles about a broad range of topics on how to help them cope with their anxiety, stress, and so on, right? So this is something which we are offering, and this is offered as counseling through telephone, online counseling, and so on. And so it's important that we constantly look at these parameters and also offer programs that help organizations, help individuals to also, in these very unprecedented times, stay on top of their game, if you ask me, right? And so as organizations, we need to ensure that there is also a constant flow of communication, because only that way we can bridge that gap that exists for the fact that we are not able to get into those meeting rooms or see each other, or just have that quick coffee corner chat, as you ask me. And hence it's super important that the communication lines become super open in both ways. Now at Labs India, I can just reflect, we were just before the lockdown, actually, we had kicked off this program called Come Alive. And Come Alive was a program which was curated to look at the overall well-being of an individual. And this was planned initially with really on-site events and things like that, looking into aspects around diet, mental health, mental well-being, physical well-being, and so on. But we quickly, once the lockdown got into effect, we changed this fully into a digital mode, and we worked on a lot of those activities which went in virtual. And again, fun learning activities for our employees, so that as much as possible, they don't miss the connects that they had when they were physically being present at work.
I don't know how it is with SAP, but generally there is a saying that a huge number of marriages people finding their partner for life is happening in the companies. Maybe in India, not so much, because still we have some other ways to find your partner in life here. But in many companies in the world, it is like this. So you have something like that for your SAP colleagues also during the lockdown, I wonder. Anyway. So, but tell me, you've been talking about the mental, of course, health of your staff. How about innovation and creativity? You know, because they're all sitting at home, and especially with SAP, I mean, I've been to your labs all over the world, and I know you have your areas where you can basically do your design thinking, your creativity, etc. How are you managing that at SAP now, when basically everybody is stuck at home?
Yeah. Maybe just zooming out a bit, because initially when in the last weeks also a lot of noise in the press, and how organizations are going to cope with this, focus on innovation versus cost containment. All this was out there. I think one clear statement that happened in our recent investor and analyst call, so when we went out with our Q1 results, I want to call out what Luka Mucic, who's our CFO and an executive board member, he clearly stated that at SAP, we will continue with a very bold investment in innovation wherever required to make sure that we maintain and also enhance our competitive advantage. I think that was a clear message, not just to investors and analysts, but also to the broader organization, that our focus on innovation and the culture of innovation that we are very proud to enjoy at SAP is, irrespective of this crisis, will continue to be the focus. Now, we've always, and you alluded to a few things like design thinking, working with our customers in co-innovation models. We've always had and fostered a very flexible work culture. And like I also mentioned earlier on, this situation of being mandated to work from home is not new to our employees, because we always had this work from home policy, like I said. And even back in the times when we worked from home, it was very normal to get into a call with our customers, talk about the roadmap, talk about the recent innovations, and get their feedback, bring it back to the development organization. So this kind of culture is something that we, of course, enjoy and continue to enjoy. And we, of course, use some of the best collaboration tools to provide the ease of remote work. I think we talked about quite a bit of them. Now, globally also, if you ask me, I mean, the engagement levels in terms of how employees continue to stay engaged and remain engaged and remain focused on innovation also is something that we are very, very keenly observing and ensuring. And innovation as well as customer centricity are two key pillars that is in focus and continue to always be in focus. And these challenging times really did not halt us in terms of our journey of innovation or our engagements with customers. Now, recently, I can just reflect back on a couple of things, right? So we had at Labs India, we kicked off this summit called the Intelligent Enterprise Summit, which was a kind of bringing together our employees across the organization, and also starting off like a flagship event for discovery of our solution portfolio and understanding some of the core business processes like total workforce management or design to operate or source to pay or lead to cash. But at the same time, we also use this as an innovation challenge, because once we got that basic education through, we use the same thing to also we use the same processes to also hinge on what are some of those very innovative ideas that people have, and what are some of those really differentiated capabilities that we can bring into the context of these processes. Now, we started this summit pre-COVID, I have to say, but then we continued even in this lockdown mode, where we went completely virtual. And again, we concluded that summit, where again we had people coming in from the organization, proposing those ideations for innovations, And now we are in the phase where we are looking at some of those proposals and trying to bring that back into our product portfolio. Or if I just look back into week before last, I was in this a platform that we really launched with about 40 of our top CIOs joining in from the APJ region. So we launched what we call as a product advisory council, where our target goal is where we from SAP are sharing some of the innovations, some of the key roadmap areas in close collaboration with some of the top CIOs across the region, and where we're also listening very carefully, understanding their journeys in this whole digital transformation, in their move to S4HANA and so on. And it's again that co-innovation mode, what you talked about, that we continue to work in, despite the fact that we are now virtual, because it's also, even if we had to do this product advisory council, even in the normal times before COVID, many of these customers would still only join in virtually, right? And like I mentioned, also, if I just look at the aspect on learning, where we believe this is also super important, that we keep that culture of innovation. This is also a great time for reinforcing the whole focus on learning, and this is also why we opened up several of our open online courses, also what we call as MOOCs, using the Open SAP platform to allow not just internally at SAP but also externally, to give them a very interactive platform to learn, interactive educational content to support professionals as well as individuals at SAP to learn about the leading technologies, the latest innovations, latest around digital economy and so on. So again, and like I also mentioned earlier on, many of the events where we also went virtual, again with the goal to give the employees the well-being that they so much need to also keep that innovation spirit high. Also fun events like having Zumba sessions or virtual yoga sessions, to even virtual music contests organized virtually, again with the focus on giving them not just the learning opportunities but also the what they need to keep up the spirits. And these are some of the things where, again, if I summarize, we've always put employees at the center of everything we do, and we are fully committed to ensuring their health, their safety, their well-being, and it remains our top priority. And it's only because of this we can also drive that innovation culture and continue to provide the support and service to our customers who rely on SAP for driving their businesses.
Do you provide your staff with a wristband where you can count the steps you're making a day? Because now that everybody is sitting at home and not moving around, how do you keep fit? You know, it's quite a challenge. Yes. Of course, you can do the webinars with the best fitness trainers in the world. That is absolutely perfect. But really, I mean, normally one should. How do you control yourself to make sure that you're still moving? But besides that, we are here all talking about basically white-collar jobs. So what about blue-collar jobs? What about the manufacturing industry? How are they affected? You can't produce your car from home, right? You cannot manufacture a machine from home. It would be a little difficult. On the other hand, 10 years ago, your former boss, Professor Kagermann, together with one of the board members of Bosch, Mr. Dice, started Industry 4.0, where basically we combine software and hardware, where we see how machines can basically talk to each other. So how does this coronavirus, how does the work from home culture here, how does it affect our whole attitude towards production, towards manufacturing? This, in a country like India, I mean, where manufacturing still plays a huge role, where blue-collar jobs, I mean, even down to the topic of the migrant laborers, is such a huge topic. How does that change reach them?
That's a very good question, and in fact that's one of the top questions, I would say. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Steinruecke, that most of the blue collar jobs have definitely taken a bad hit due to the current COVID situation. There is no doubt about that. However, having said that, the manufacturing sector, if you ask me, will need to tweak their business operations strategy. And many of them had and continue to tweak them as we speak, right? And clearly, when we talk about manufacturing now, it's anyway digital manufacturing that we talk about, and digital is the way to go. There is, and I continue to re-emphasize that adoption of technologies that can exist, that can really support your existing workforce to operate remotely, and also while they're even at their respective shop floors. So you've seen many of the manufacturing companies slowly restart operations in a very slow, staggered approach. But here again, making sure that we have technologies also in the respective shop floors becomes super important. And business continuity planning has never assumed this kind of significance than ever before, right? And many of the conversations that we are having with the CIOs and even in this space of manufacturing, supply chain, so on, is all on visibility and is all on understanding the demand and supply. Like I said, where can they very quickly bring together those suppliers who can allow them to meet the demands that they have. And all this is only possible because if you have a digitally enabled supply chain. And this is where we at SAP again are really very proud to work very closely with some of the largest manufacturing companies in the world, because we've always been ahead of the curve when we're talking about key technologies which are part of the digital manufacturing construct, things like vision-based AI or computer vision, because these can play a really critical role in terms of monitoring, even going down to an employee to give them the information on social distancing at work, what surfaces are employees touching, even fundamental things like how often have we cleaned and sanitized the mask and temperature compliance, things like this, right? So again, you can use a lot of technology to also drive some of these things which we are all being now asked to enforce. And again, you talked about Industry 4.0. I would call it Industry 4.now. And here again, with technologies, be it AI, be it machine learning, be it Internet of Things. I mean, with Internet of Things, we can enable not just the creation of the digital twin of your existing machinery, which an operator can sit wherever he is sitting in his office or home, and giving him that visibility into that machinery that is on the shop floor, right? And gives him the possibility to have to give a service technician all the information at his fingertips to provide that kind of remote support. So as I said, the industry definitely needs to recalibrate, and by this the industry could also enable the blue-collared workforce to carry out business as close to usual, I would say, as close to usual. And you see that also where when we talk about Industry 4.now and some of the biggest challenges that the industrial workforce is facing when we talk about manufacturing or service companies, we're really looking at turning to Industry 4.0 technologies, like I said, AI, augmented reality, connected worker software, to empower their frontline workforce with all the collaboration tools, with all the guidelines, all the knowledge that they need to perform at very high levels of safety, very high levels of productivity, very high levels of quality, right? So these are some of the things that that becomes very critical. And overall, if you ask me, as a very positive person by nature, I'm sure that in a few months' time, the world will slowly limp back to normalcy, and we will run full steam. I mean, as humanity, we have faced quite some crises in the past and also have managed to overcome it and also prosper after this. Indeed, this crisis is very intense and very unique, but I'm also confident that we will overcome this one too, Mr. Steinruecke.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have another 5 minutes to go. We have a few questions, and the first question that has come up is the question on how do you basically evaluate people working from home? How do you evaluate their performance when they are working from home? Of course, SAP, your staff has been working from home already a lot, but how do you, does it change the way you evaluate the performance of people?
No, like I said, I think we touched on this, and when especially when you had that question on productivity, right? And there are multiple measures and measures, not just because we want to look at if everything is in place and all that, but to go back and see if we are providing the right infrastructure and right platforms to help and support and make our employees be at their best, perform at their best. Now, a couple of things like I called out earlier on, right? Like backlog performance. So this is something that we indeed look at when we talk about overall productivity, if there is any dip in the number of backlog items that are being processed, or things like customer usage. I mean, we definitely very closely observe the trend of customers using our software. And again, given that we are talking about cloud solutions, it becomes a lot more easier for us to also assess the customer usage. But also we have the customer support aspect, right, where customers raise tickets, raise issues to SAP. We also looked at the trend of those statistics and also the response time, because this is also something over the years we know what is the maximum response time on both sides, and these are some of the things that we have always been looking into and which are always a good indicators of if whether we have the right platforms, whether we have the right technologies, how can we go the extra mile to ensure that whenever that there is any kind of change in these parameters that we've always been looking into, that we can very quickly react and adapt. And like I don't also want to miss out on the fact that, again, the communication bit, to have that connect with your employees is super important. And this is where also the leadership teams, the management teams become very critical to have that direct connect, have that personal connect, because this is where you really not just with the parameters that I talked about, but having those personal information as well becomes very important in these times, Mr. Steinruecke.
Absolutely. I'm sure the evaluation of the performance of your kids when they do their homework and mama is helping may be a little difficult to evaluate, isn't it?
I have my kids running in once in a way asking me, hey, can you help me with this? And you're like, oh, I'm in a call. I'll come back in a few minutes. You know, this is very common these days.
So now should the work from home continue whenever possible after the situation stabilizes? What is your take? There are companies who are saying we will continue and we will, I mean, TCS, they said in future only 25% work from office. And this is a total mind change. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, yes, this should continue. Why? Because, like I said, even it's a great opportunity for us to also look into areas of the workforce which were challenged to get to work earlier, and now suddenly I think organizations, at least at SAP, yes, we were privileged to enjoy this even before, but a lot of organizations were hesitant, right, to go into this mode. And now suddenly everybody has developed this confidence, developed, hey, it works. We are able to continue our business, especially in the technology side of the house. And so that renewed confidence, of course, opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of people. And I think this is a great thing, because we will also be able to tap into areas of the workforce where earlier on you would probably say, hey, I'm not able to do this work because I don't want to leave the comfort of my home or my my city or state that I operate out of, whatever be it, right? And I think also if I just look at the new and upcoming workforce of tomorrow, these are people who are already pretty acquainted with a lot of the technologies. For them as well, I think it opens up a lot of these possibilities now that we have these options. And if I just look at the workforce of the future, you will see a lot of those scenarios where you have parts of your larger chunks of your product being developed by very quick, skilled, very focused people who are not maybe part of your permanent workforce, but contingent workforce. Again, here having policies like work from home and having this as kind of the new norm, as you called it, becomes super critical for success of organizations, I would think.
Since we're coming to the end of our time, maybe at the end, one question which we've been discussing on the side, and that brings me back to the special situation in India with regard to the migrant laborers. In India, everyone, more or less everyone, has an Aadhaar card. One of the challenges of the migrant laborers was actually that nobody knew what are their specific skills. And would it be thinkable to, for instance, add on the Aadhaar card the individual skills of the people, and then maybe combine it even with the new Arogya Setu
app,
the app that shows where you are. So basically that then when people with certain skills are somewhere and an employer close by knows I need them urgently, he knows, oh, they are close by, and one can link them up. Or is that too much of supervision or too much of data, private data being shared, and George Orwell is calling?
No. I mean, I know we have discussed this, Mr. Steinruecke, and actually we have even discussed this in detail from a solution proposal as well on how best we can really enable the migrant workers. Because I mean, as you well know, we are talking about 100 million migrant workers in India, and this is the population that is significantly impacted during these times. And to your kind of thinking on, and also on how can we bring together aspects around your digital data that you get from your Aadhaar card and linking it with also the skill sets of these migrant workers, and very quickly matching it with the demand in a particular location, and doing that how do you call it, matchmaking, if you may will. I mean, from a technology point of view, this is super easily realizable. This is not a technology marvel or something where we need like several months to work on. It's pretty straightforward, but the main question will be about who is providing access to the data. And this is where I believe a very strong collaboration with the governments, and where the government is also helping organizations like SAP to come forward and say, okay, this is the way forward. We will give you access to this data, and here is the other data, and here is where we can complement this data set with also the skills. Because again, as an organization, we can bring in the technology, we can bring in the resources to build that out, but we don't have the data, right? And this is where that strong collaboration between the government and organizations like us can really very quickly bring together technologies to make that possible and help these migrant workers. So all in for that. And here, Mr. Steinruecke, if you help support us with getting the right folks from the government to work with us, we'll be very happy to work on this with you.
Great. So Sindhu, thank you very much. Probably we have to ask Nandan Nilekani from Infosys, who has put up the Aadhaar card to or the UID to look into that again. He's also based in Bangalore, so that should be fairly easy. I think we have not promised too much. We heard that you were involved in the intelligence enterprise strategy. So you are sort of the intelligence person of SAP. And that's what was reflected here in our discussion. I've certainly enjoyed it a lot. And as my friends, our listeners know, SAP means solves all problems. And on top of it, as you know, the slogan, as you can see here, the best run. And therefore, I think we had the absolute best run now that solves all problems. And we can see here the last slide. Adopt digital, no more a thing, no more a good thing to have, but a must have. The second takeaway is sound body, active mind, adopt good practices to maintain a healthy regime. And the third, keep the communication on, drive the optimism internally and externally. And just one last advice, we couldn't go out, so many of us, of course, did some exercise at home, but I can also only recommend you, if you live in a house that has more than 3 or 4 floors, just walk up the staircase, whatever, 20 times a day. I tell you, it makes a big, big difference. So therefore, thank you very, very much for joining us here today. And Sindhu, thank you for sharing your experience, your views, and your positive spirit. I think this is something we really need in these challenging times. But this is something which actually in India, I'm always amazed, and I've always been amazed, that at the end, the positive spirit, the can-do attitude, this is what will carry us forward, and this is what will take us through this absolute unique crisis. Never miss a good crisis. Thank you so much, and all the best to Bangalore and the rest of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Steinruecke. It was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.